I think, halfway.
After chapter 20, you said we finished with chapter 20.
See, we have been trying to consider the factors that the reason must be more enlightened than it has been up till now, and more man is closely knit with all other people around him, and therefore for common life, common effort, common work, and common aspiration, there should be a greater and a higher degree of enlightenment of human reason, and love of comrades or love of friends or sympathy with others, or what he calls in other respect fraternity. David is there, I think. Marie is there, I think.
Can you in here?
Oh. So such a program, if it is carried out, we would have free cooperative society in which there would be socialistic idea carried out. But how can this be done without some kind of government? This is the problem. How can you bring about this fraternity, feeling of comradeship, sympathy, and greater use of reason without some kind of compulsion, with some kind of rule, government? And in arriving at any arrangement like this on a vast scale, we have to bear in mind that there is always an infra-rational element in human nature, and that has to be governed. You cannot let loose intra-rational elements in man under the plea of complete freedom. Then social existence would be not possible. So, without that, and also without some vital satisfaction or vital impulse, well, life becomes poor, mechanical, and artificial. In fact, it becomes uncreative. And if it does not suppress this infra-rational element, then it upsets the whole balance of life, whole plan of life. If man is allowed to live his life according to reason, pure mind, pure intellect, then he tends to be what in Indian language we call a sattvic man, a man of quiet and balanced, harmonious temperament. Man whose temperament is balanced and harmonious, intellectually, detached, a behavior in which the mind dominates, and the emotional and the vital being is kept under the control of the reasoning part, which is detached, so that it gives rise to a kind of harmony of the being, sattvic being. But this rational being that man at present is, can at the most give us this sattvic type, which will lack dynamism, which will lack creativity, and reason being a transitional faculty or transitional capacity, it won't satisfy the man's thirst for perfection. Life's thirst for perfection will not be satisfied. A rational being is only the middle term. There is a pull from below, you can say a gravitational pull below, and also a pull above. So between the two pulls, the gravitational pull of the lower life and the pull of the higher life, the rational being of man is situated. You see, he is in between. And even by his reason, man is not safe. You see, he can justify the infra-rational by reason, or he can flout the supra-rational by reason. So that reason is not a safe condition to remain. He must go submit to the infra-rational gravitation or to the ascent which is pulling him up. Civilization as a failure would be the result of these vitalistic exaggerations. And if freedom is to be given, it must be spiritual freedom, inner freedom that can alone create a perfect human order. And inner freedom and inner growth, which can allow man only, it's the only thing that can allow man to reach a perfect order. This brotherhood is not merely an external sympathy or expression of can say mere emotional being, but it's a deeper feeling of brotherhood. which goes to the identity of the soul, really speaking. And it will really give rise to not merely a feeling of brotherhood or a dictation of behavior by the feeling of brotherhood, but a love. You see, a love which is alone can take away the egoistic element and lead man to real feeling of brotherhood. Because as he said in the ideal of human unity, for egoism even to talk of brotherhood is talk of something about which it knows nothing. For egoism, even to feel and talk about brotherhood is, it talks about anything which egoism doesn't know. So he said it is love alone that can curb this egoism and its individualism to which it gives rise. And when we say that it is a deeper brotherhood and deeper unity, this unity is founded upon the divinity of man, the presence of the divine in everybody. You see, it is a perception of the divine in each, or God in each, and each Godhead in each a unique Godhead. Again, remember, because there is otherwise a perception that all must be just like oneself. No. A differentiation and a variation in the manifestation of the Godhead also is perceived as a necessity and also a compulsion that comes from the divine origin, divine essence. It is itself allowing and permitting this variation because it is indispensable for a multiple manifestation or a multitudinous manifestation of its own self. Equal Godhead in the race also, just as we grant a Godhead in the individual, so the Godhead in the race. That would be true communism, true in the sense of spiritual communism, in which each individual is felt as the divine in its varying aspect, and yet the divinity is not lost sight of, and a brotherhood based upon this perception of divinity in all would lead to real communism in the sense of a spiritual communism. No machinery invented by reason or can create this spiritual, community. You can say, therefore, we have to indefinitely postpone the creation of anything supra-rational. That is one argument, is that reason cannot create this order. Reason cannot create a spiritual society. That is out of order, you must rule it out. It's not possible. And you can therefore say that we must indefinitely postpone the possibility of creating a spiritual society. But on the other hand, if you grant that a few men can also begin the change, then it is not impossible to make a start with few people, a small minority. If this is not the solution, then of course we must also admit that there is no other solution. If few people are not granted the permission to start a spiritual society, then we have no other, because reason is not going to give anything more than what it has given. It will be a provisional order. It will be a changing order, and it will be a return of reason upon its own curb. That is to say, reason will curb its own manifestation. Reason will come to dominate other people's reason, not one's own reason, but anybody else differing in reason will be crushed. So reason is not going to give any more solution. Then if this is not the solution, he says there is no other solution. We must also grant. And if only this change can begin if only few people definitely decide to begin the change, and it can begin with the few, and then their influence can slowly spread in the many, and it may slowly begin the alteration of life of mankind on a very small scale. That is one possibility. Otherwise, there is no other possibility. And then in this chapter that follows, 21st, he is trying out to show the spiritual aim and life. The whole movement of life, individual life and collective life, whether it is moving towards realizing a spiritual aim. Logically speaking, if you look at the progress and growth of life from inconscience to a greater degree of consciousness that is coming into manifestation, then can we say that the spiritual aim is the aim towards which, or goal towards which, life is making a move? A society founded upon spirituality will differ in two essentials from normal human society. If a spiritual society is to be founded, it will differ in two respects, two particular aspects. One, Normal society is a result of gregarious instinct, and their antagonism of interest is always at work. Some group interest is working in one direction, other group's interest in working in another direction. Clash and association of egos, conflict of ideas, tendencies, and principles. There is also association, sympathy, and helpfulness in such societies. Custom and contract and mass of social, institutions are justified. Some of them are even infra-rational. Man as a physical, vital, and mental being is affirmed and confirmed in the present constitution of social life. Social life today takes for granted man as a mental being, as a vital being, as a physical being. It does not necessarily take for granted man as a soul, man as a spiritual being. Civilization has created many, many more problems than it can solve now. It has multiplied needs, it has multiplied man's desires, and some intellectuals have already been declaring civilization a failure. They have been telling the civilization has already failed because it has created problems which mind cannot solve, cannot cope with. There were people who said we must return to nature, you see, the original conditions from which we have come to modern stage. And more and more artificial remedies of science, you see, will be applied. Either you return to nature or create mechanical conditions such a way that engine will replace life, so to say. You can say that a mechanical appliance will replace life. And there we have to realize that mind, life, and body do not make up the sum of complete manhood. This is the axiom with which spiritual society begins. That mind, life, and body are not, even their sum is not, the complete idea or integral conception of manhood. They are means. Mind, life, body. They are instruments. They are means. They are not aims in themselves. So if you add ethics, if you add religion, if you add intellectual idealism and so on, yet man is not saved from disillusionment and from wearisome and from decay, because these are not his whole being. Ethics will only refer to his part of his intellect, or idealism will refer to his mind. Whatever cultural movement man has done has not based itself upon the conception of man as a spirit, man as a soul, but man as a mind. Idealism conceived by mind. The starting of culture has never been on the basis of man being fundamentally, essentially a spirit. Now, I quote from him: the ancient intellectual cultures of Europe ended in disruptive doubt and the skeptical and doubt and skeptical impotence, and pieties of Asia in stagnation and decline. This is the sum total, you can say, overall result of Western and Eastern culture. Disruptive doubt and skeptical impotence on the Western side. In Asia, stagnation and decline. That's all that has happened. Modern society has put progress as the same progress, you see, and there is no aim. Constantly changes progress. It has what is the aim of your society? Is a progress. What is progress? Constant change. There is no aim of the progress. So progress is not to end somewhere. No, progress is constantly to go on. You see, otherwise it wouldn't be progress from that point of view. It's a movement in a circle which seems to lead nowhere. It is going round, going round and round. Hope is in the new turn, the inward turn to greater subjectivity, which is showing itself in various fields of human life. Reason having turned its curve, man is compelled to throw himself more and more to seek his subjectivity, to take up subjective attitude in his individual and collective life, in his art movement, in his poetic movement, in his aesthetic movement. He is seeking for a new subjective turn, and there is some hope in that direction. This is also, I quote from his writing here in this chapter, this is an old discovery, and that it governed the old societies under the name of religion. This spiritual attitude governed old societies under the name of religion. But that was only in appearance, that was not also in reality. The discovery was for the individual only. Even when spiritual remedy was found out and a spiritual attitude was taken, the application of spiritual attitude of man as a spirit was only true or real only for the individual. The collective life, social life was never centered around the realization of man as a spirit. It was an individual achievement. It was personal. One could do what you wanted to do and reach God or realize God and give whatever he wanted to give to some half a dozen or dozen persons around him. Collectivity was never thought of as a term of the supreme manifestation or manifestation of the divine. Old societies never made spiritual use of their religions. They were bound up with customs and institutions. And no questions in those old religions were allowed as they are allowed today in the age of reason. Religion was afterwards mechanized in its course of growth. Church and priesthood, all these things were settled on the human being. This was the false socialization of religion and is the chief cause of failure to regenerate mankind. It is because they foisted all these half-truths or secondary things upon man in the name of religion and spirituality that religion failed. Greatest religious fervor, now this is a very great statement and very important one, greatest religious fervor can coexist with darkest ignorance. One can be very full of fervor about his religion, and he says this is his sentence I purposely quote because I want to bring it to the notice of our friends, you see. It can coexist with the darkest ignorance. One can be absolutely ignorant and you are full of fervor, religious fervor. When the individual is obliged to flee from a society in order to find room for spiritual growth, that is a great sign of this failure. This is also from his sentence, you see. When the individual has to leave society and go somewhere else in order to live his spiritual life, it means society has failed in its culture. There is no doubt about that. When there is this division between life and spirit, man and God, you see, then life is condemned. It is not the divine or spirit who suffers, it's life that is condemned. Saints and hermits may be there, pious beings and great spiritual lights may be there, but that does not make up for cultural loss or cultural decline, you see. May be there, but unless the race, unless the whole society, unless the nation is moved toward the spiritualization of life, the whole spiritual effort ends in littleness and ultimately weakens and leads to stagnation. You see? So the spiritual aim must become the aim of collective life. The collectivity, the race must take it up. You see? Man is not merely a mind and life and body as we saw before, but a soul incarnated for divine fulfillment upon earth. He is incarnated here, he has taken up a mind, he has taken up a life and a body in order to fulfill divine fulfillment on earth. Therefore, they are not the ends in themselves, mental being or vital desires or ambitions or attainments or success and so on. But they are instruments of the soul. They are imperfect instruments and, they have not yet seized the purpose for which they are intended. These mind and life and body, they are instruments that have not yet realized the purpose for which they have to be utilized. The destiny of man is to spiritualize himself, and destiny of the race is to spiritualize the whole race. The whole being of man can become divine in spite of nature's darkened denials and of this ultimate certitude. Nature is denied in the mind and so on. But that is the destiny. Man as an individual and as a collectivity, as a soul form of the infinite, a collective soul myriadly embodied upon earth for a divine fulfillment in its manifold relations and its multitudinous activities. That is the destiny of man to realize. All parts of man's being are sacred. That is to say, his intellect, his emotional being, his vital being, his nervous being, his physical being. Man is, his potentiality as the Godhead. He has to hold in trust. But there will be no external compulsion for promoting this attitude and this belief and this action. large liberty will have to be given to man if this is to be realized. If spiritual life is to become the law of society, it must come out of inner change, not out of any compulsion. Increase of freedom will be the sign that man is growing toward this inner spiritual, attitude that man is a spirit, towards the true spiritualization of life. That when more and more freedom is given, that will be a sign that probably human spirit is moving toward this goal, that man is a spirit and not only a mind or vital life or body. Man must free himself and not be forced. All yoke must be self-accepted. If there is any yoke, it must be willingly accepted by the human being himself. True spirituality will not lay a yoke upon science or upon philosophy. Each part of man has his own dharma, means his own function to perform, which it must follow. They have a right to deny if they are sincere. You see, they have no, if they are sincere, spirituality has no right to deny them. In art, for instance, the highest art is that which, by an inspired use of significant and interpretative form, unseals the door of the spirit. Man requires certain freedom to stumble also in his action. Even freedom to commit mistakes must be given to man, as well as to err and to arrive at knowledge by committing mistakes. Society has to coerce the dynamic and vital man because it does it for its own sake, for its own safety. Stealing, murder, wounding, fighting is not allowed in the interest of social life itself. There, this freedom is not given because social life would be in danger. But that only changes the devil. It does not change the man. It only changes the devil, as he puts it here. It must find a higher law. Yes, it must find a higher law. Freedom even of the lower members should be allowed ultimately in any scheme of spiritual perfection. Spirituality will respect, but it will not leave those parts as they are. It will allow those parts to express themselves after transformation. Transformation will be taken, will go through. Those parts which are now infra-rational will not be crushed, will not be, what you call niruddha, as they call it, pushed down. They will be brought up to the surface and transformed. They will not be controlled as they are in society by being kept down. And this is a very difficult task because it has to be left to the working of a spiritual power or a spiritual consciousness. You see, if a man in such a spiritual society is subject to infra-rational movements, generally they don't come in such movements. They won't come. But if they come in, then the infra-rational movement is not to be curbed by outer discipline. Now, if in a group life there is somebody, say for instance, who is idle, or is addicted to some habit, we say, which is not good, you can at the most give advice, you can argue, you can reason out that that is not good, but compulsion should not be exercised because that would be denial of that freedom which is the very central basis of spiritual community. You see, a spiritual community, the spirit shall be allowed full freedom to make a choice, even in the midst of ignorance. And that makes the process very long because the human being is very idle and tamasic, inert, he doesn't want to change. He continues in his, darkness or in his groove of stupidity or ignorance, whatever it is. And it takes years and years to come out of it. Even by the exercise of a tremendous spiritual power, human being, is impervious, absolutely impervious. This is very strange, but it is true. People say that if divine was there, we would do that. But I can tell you from experience that even if the divine is, concretely present before oneself, no change takes place in human being. Absolutely no change. It is very strange, but this is true because human being is chained to his infra-rational origin. You see, the inconscience is heavy gravitational pull is there, and man doesn't muster of either aspiration, courage, or sincerity, or inner spiritual attitude to stand up against his nature and compel it to change by his own decision. Divine will immediately help, but the man must make a room for the divine to enter. If you don't allow the divine to enter, it's not the part of the divine to compel. Just as outer discipline is not given, so in the inner realm, even compulsion is not exercised. The maximum that is done is to awaken the divinity in the individual himself, because it is the divine in him that must reject these parts. And if he is dull and tamasic and inert and idle and addicted to old continuation of habits, well, man doesn't change, doesn't think of changing. The spiritual aim will seek to fulfill itself in a fullness of life. Body also will not be neglected in the scheme of spiritual organization of society. Ascetic starving of the vital will not be there, nor deny art and beauty in life. It will reveal to man the divinity in himself as the light, strength, beauty, the highest good, delight and immortality. Build up in the outer life the kingdom of God, which is first discovered within. An outer life which is first discovered inside. See? Now there is a small chapter which would end the book, so I think perhaps you might as well go through. Necessity of spiritual transformation, whether spiritual transformation is needful. This is 22nd. Well, life force in man is instinctive and moves automatically. The life force, the vital being of man, is instinctive and automatic in its first ordering. When it first awake, it is instinctive and automatic. And when he finds himself opposed by this reason and artificiality and so on, man thinks of returning to nature. Let us go back to nature. Even some of the acute thinkers even have committed this mistake. A man like Anatole France even have, you see, committed a mistake that man should go back. He doesn't realize it is impossible. It's not possible. It cannot be done. You see, it thinks of returning to nature and to find this kind of spontaneous working again back. Well, the method is wrong. The idea is not correct. It would not happen. Nietzsche's idea rather is more correct, that man has to become Superman. That fundamental, not Nietzsche's idea of Superman is right, but his idea that man must exceed his present formula. There he is right, that man has to become not, again, natural man, but a Superman. This is exceed his present formula. It's sound. To become ourselves, that is to exceed ourselves, is true. But whole question we have to decide is what is that self? That's all. You have to be yourself, he says. Then you will be a Superman. Yes, but which self? You are a mental being. Is it your vital self that has to become a Superman? Is the vital self that has to become Superman? Well, then Hitler said, I will become a Superman. You see? So if the vital is allowed to, inflate itself and arrogate to itself the position of something divine or semi-divine, well, it claims supermanhood, a false supermanhood, because it's only exaggeration of human ego. But the idea that man must exceed his present formula of nature and cease to become a limited creature confined in his mind, in his life being, in his emotional being, and his body, well, that is fundamentally true, he says. Nietzsche's conception of man as one capable of outwitting or overcoming the limitation of his present constitution is sound, he says. And if man is, what is the self of man? And if you say man is divine, where is the seat of his divinity in man? Is it in the intellect? In his reason? We have seen all along that it is not. Man is a spirit, a soul. To open normal humanity to something now beyond itself, that is yet, which is yet its destined perfection, that would be man's supermanhood. But what we call normal humanity, people say that why do you want to go beyond present formula of man? Man is normal. Sharanda says man is not normal. No man is normal. Humanity itself is abnormal. Abnormal in the sense that it's not living in its true center. It is living in life or impulses or nervous being or ideas or emotions or thoughts or reason, which is living in its partial being, and it is not therefore normal. Normal it will be when it lives in the soul. Well, normal humanity is a freak. It is abnormal. Man is an abnormal being. He has not yet found his own normality. It is only a provisional order that he is living in. He has only attained a provisional order, and man is infinitely greater than the plant and the animal. We always know that man is greater than the plant and the animal. And yet he is not perfect in his own nature as the plant and the animal are in their own nature. They don't require any help from outside. Man is greater, but he is not perfect in his nature as they are perfect, because their nature has provided machinery for them to function out and do what is required of them. Their functions are dictated by universal nature. It is nothing to be deplored that man is not so perfect in his nature, as perfect as the plant and the animal. It is rather a privilege. It is rather right and a promise that man can rise to something more than what he is. Self-development and self-succeeding are therefore possible to man, because he is not compelled like the plant and the animal by nature to go through a functional movement without his conscious participation. Well, as man is abnormal to the animal, so God seems to be abnormal to man now. Relation between animal and man and God, you see, well, it is the same distance. Only the animal has no conscious attempt or possibility of attempt to rise to man. Man has the possibility of conscious attempt to rise to God. Well, it's a hard work, but also a crown, and crown not only of himself, but of the whole human race. A kingdom is offered to him, beside which, I'm quoting from his book now, a kingdom is offered to man, beside which his present triumph in the realm of mind or over external nature will appear only as a rough hint and a very poor beginning. When he rose his inmost being, then he will see that going to the moon is not a marvelous thing. Yes. Man today is animal nature plus something of half divine nature. The aim of animal part of man is to increase the vital possession and enjoyment and selfishness and greed and desire and all this. And the aim of the semi-divine part of man is to grow, to possess, to enjoy, but spiritually. Now this is manhood. Two parts in man, one infrarational, one half divine. The infrarational trying to insist on the vital part of life, the another trying to insist on the higher part of man's being. But man has a new soul power available to him. And he is under the compulsion to grow in the light of that inner power which is there in him. And it is that power can reshape his environment. And to get into that center and remold his life in the light of that inner center which is in him is his true function. True function of man is to find his true spiritual individuality or individual center and mold his life, guide his life in the light of that center. That is his true function. Then he will be normal, as you would say. He is then a normal human being. If he fails in this, well, he fails in the very aim of nature that has in him. Man has put the yoke of his intellect and ethics, etc., on his vital being and on his physical parts. He cannot be content to remain a mere human animal all along. If he does that, he will be only human animal. And all along he will not be content to remain a human animal. He will like to remain in the condition in which he does not require an artificial, pressure on any part of his being to fulfill its function. He has not transformed his nature yet, because his will is centered in the vital today, in the life force, in desire element, in ambition, in possession, in trying to make his life economically a success. You see, the higher life is an intruder in his vital life. Higher life is not normal to his vital life. A higher life is not natural to him. It simply comes in and disturbs his vital life, in fact. Always it is at odds, and yet half it is in love also with it. Therefore, there is not yet a harmonious growth, and they are yet compelled and condemned to remain together, vital part and the other part seeking a higher fulfillment. If the individual has attained a partial transformation, The race also can do it. If individual can attain a partial transformation of his nature, well, that shows the potentiality of the race. The exceptional individual is the future type. Exceptional individual is a forerunner of others. You see, it is like that. One man begins, and then 10 men and 20 men and 100 men, and that's how it begins. Today, there is a domination of the higher parts over the lower parts wherever necessary or where social life is concerned. But there is no transformation. Man obeys because he is compelled to obey. Man behaves in a way which you say is good behavior or moral behavior, not because he is moral by his inner conviction or, well, inner attitude, but because he is compelled. There is no transformation. Either life takes revenge or it decays. It becomes wild and does what it likes, or it decays. Modern age has regarded mind only as the instrument of life and matter. It has devoted all its knowledge to the expansion of the vital being. Intellect only as a rare orchid in the buttonhole of the vital man. Wonderful sentence. It's a marvelous reading, you see. Yes, even intellect is only like a buttonhole in the vital man. Reason a magnificent servant of life and matter, and civilized nations, you see, for this world. Reason is for being called civilized nations, you see. You must use reason. And for wealth and markets of the world, you have to use this reason to secure markets and wealth in the world. A nobler idea was born and has taken birth. Well, no, this reason is a magnificent servant of life and matter. And this seeking of wealth of the markets, wealth of the world, has ended titanically by 2 world wars, you see, between most efficient and civilized nations of the world. This did not take place between barbarians. The 2 world wars took place between, I am quoting in inverted commas, you see, most efficient and most civilized nations of the world. They were not Africans who fought. Yes, they were very civilized people who fought, who were using reason to have an efficient, vital organization of collective life. And a nobler idea certainly is born, but under this shadow of death and tragedy. A nobler idea that humanity must be one has been born under the shadow of this death. Awakening was not complete even then, and it was not as sincere as it should have been. Well, but yet there is some hope. And man must awaken his spiritual self and not remain confined to his vital self. That is one idea which is necessary now to be pushed to the front. Man must climb to the summits of his being, to the reign of the spirit over his mind, reign of the spirit over his life, reign of the spirit over his body. This has persisted in Asia in the past. Asia has failed in life because she failed not because she followed the spirit, but because she did not follow spirit sufficiently and correctly. She had a division between life and spirit. Life and God were always, renunciation was made in compulsory condition. What is required now is not a departure from life, but a conquest of life by the inner aim of man's spirit. It is possible to superimpose spirituality on a mental, vital, and physical being and life. Or it is also possible to compromise and say a little bit of spirituality, a little bit of life as it is going on, to allow the lower range freedom to some extent and pay frequent homage to spiritual life and say, yeah, spirituality is good, but also our selfishness and greed and vital being also is good. We do not want humanity leading ordinary life touched only by spiritual influence. This is very important also. It is not merely a little touch of spiritual life that is required, and ordinary life can go on, but little influence of the spiritual life. We do not want humanity leading ordinary life and touched by some spiritual influence. The center of consciousness has to be transformed And in order to transform, it has to be raised. An ascent more momentous than one which nature overpassed when she passed from animal to man, is still greater changes to take in man's consciousness when man now has been called upon to ascend from human to the spiritual consciousness, the higher consciousness of the spirit. And the instrument for attaining this change will be, well, his spiritual will, not his vital will, not his will in the life, but will of the spirit in him. To transfer from the vital being is instrumental now, to the spirit, the central reality. Well, that is the secret that we are trying to discover. How to transfer the will of the human being from his vitality to his inner spirit, because that alone can succeed in transforming his nature. Our present highest instrument is mind, but that is only an intermediary, as we have often seen, and it must elevate inwards, it must move or ascend upwards, or it will have to gravitate downwards. If it doesn't do that, go inward or go upward, then it will have to otherwise to gravitate downwards. Ideals are unrealized potentialities. Submission to the actual by compromise is very easy to carry out, but transformation of our actual way of living is difficult. You can compromise and say, life requires so much, therefore I must not fully go headlong with spiritual attitude in my life, you see, and must be compromised with what is actual. This is very often the case. Our idealism is always the most rightly human thing in us, and but as a mental idealism, it is a thing which is ineffective. To be effective, this idealism has to convert itself into a spiritual realism. Mental idealism has failed because mind does not catch the full idea, one, and mind, even when it catches the full idea, is not able to persuade or compel life to take up the idea and carry it out faithfully. When idea is given or ideal is given to life, well, life simply does what it likes with it. Therefore, we are not pleading for an intellectual idealism in the sense that, oh, I want spiritual life. No, we want, he says, spirituality itself must become real to us. It must not remain ideal in the mind. Just as one pursues money, one pursues desire, well, he must pursue spiritual realization or concrete experience. That is spiritual realism, when spirituality becomes the first priority of life. When spiritual attainment or spiritual growth or spiritual experience becomes the first priority of life, then one has got what he calls here the spiritual realism. Where is it here? Which shall lay its hands upon the higher reality of the spirit and take up for this lower reality of our sensational, vital, and physical nature. This transference upward of our will to be a power of life, this upward transformation of our nature by awakening the spiritual will or will for realizing spiritual reality of ourself in life, this is our means of attaining the transformation. Principle of perfection is to awaken this will in us, will of the spirit for concrete experience of spiritual life. Nature cannot effect this change in man. The change man must himself bring about, because in man, nature has shot up beyond the physical and the vital basis, and mind is a conscious instrument given to man. Perfection of man lies in unfolding this ever-perfect spirit which is in man already. Now nature will not do this for man, because nature has awakened herself to the need of this thing in man, and it is now left to man to make a conscious effort towards it. In the lower kingdom, perfection is instinctive, imposed by nature, that is to say. In the higher, it will be intuitive, integrally conscious, not unconscious. It will be intuitive, not rational. It will be a growth, intuitive growth into the divine, possession of the spiritual being, enjoyment of the spiritual, delight. It cannot come by mere idea or a system or a formula. Asia committed this mistake, and true freedom and perfection will come only when the spirit bursts through the forms of mind and life. What is attained is not enough. To set the greater life within must be the preoccupation of man today. That is a complete chapter and complete book. Voila. Now, tomorrow means 3 days, 11th, 12th, and 13th. Morning we do Savitri, in the evening we have questions. And 14th morning, Sri Aurobindo's place in Indian cultural renaissance. 14th morning. So that will end the series.
14th morning would be.
Indian cultural renaissance. Sri Aurobindo's place in Indian cultural renaissance.
And then Savitri will be morning and evening.
No, 11th, 12th, and 13th morning.
Oh, morning. Any questions in the evening?
Any other ashram or centers of the ashram where they're really leading
Three or four.
three or four.
One is in UP by Abhay Dev, in the 100 acres which he inherited from his father. He was a sannyas. A very interesting story. He was principal of the Gurukul University, Arya Samaj, a religious institution of India, which is very formative like Protestants, you see. And he was principal of the Gurukul Arya Samaj. And he happened to come in contact with Sri Aurobindo's literature. And he was convinced that this is real spirituality of modern times. So he tried to practice the yoga, and he did. He became his disciple. He remained 2 months. He became Arya Samajis. They had many questions because they are, embedded in certain beliefs. You see, it's a religion. And he had great questions, particularly with regard to the vital life and fulfillment and acceptance of life in spirituality and woman's place in spiritual life and all these questions. 2 months he remained. And in 2 months he got a complete satisfaction. Mainly he was talking with me and 1 or 2 people. But his devotion for Sri Aurobindo and Mother increased gradually during those 2 months. And so he approached Mother. The Arya Samajis got wild and said that you can't take a guru like that, because he said that I believe in Sri Aurobindo as incarnation. Why not? If the incarnation is there, I believe in it. There can be no incarnation in Arya Samaj. So he resigned his post. He said, I am not going to submit to that. It is my conscience. It's not that I should or should not believe, but you can't tell me what I must believe. So he resigned. And then he was a sannyasi already. He had renounced. He had gone away from his house. And he was not taking a pie as a principal of the university, Gurukul. He was practically the vice chancellor. And he was doing free. He was only having quarter and some food and clothes. That's all from the institution. And though they were very sorry to lose him that way, because he had a big name. He had gone to jail several times. He has fought in the freedom battle and so on. He's a very sincere man. So he gave up his post, and then he was trying to settle somewhere. So he said that, shall I go to Delhi? Then Jauhar was there, and Jauhar offered him some place. And he remained in Jauhar's place, where now the ashram is in Delhi. So he found that Jauhar was slow in developing the center spiritually, because Jauhar was perhaps in financial strain at that time and couldn't attend to the need of the institution that was growing. So he put it to Mother, and he said, Mother, what may I do? Shall I work in Delhi? Then I work under you in Delhi. Or what shall I do? There is another, that my father has a land somewhere in a place where he retired, I can go there. Or I have my own property which I have renounced, and if you say, I can go back to my native place. So Mother said, go back to your native place. So he took back his 100 acres of very fertile land on the bank of the Ganges. There is a canal of Ganges, and it's a very fertile territory of UP. UP is a very fertile land, you see, tract. Sugar plantations and so on, big work. So he took up his 100 acres and started an ashram, a high school and an ashram. And about 30 people, 25 people are living on that land now and practicing the yoga. That's one center.
How long ago was that?
Oh, about 10 years now.
What was his name again?
Charthaval. The name place is Charthaval, and the man's name is Abhaydev. Abhaydev, Swami Abhaydev. He is not Swami, he doesn't call himself Swami. So Abhaydev, Acharya Abhaydev, you see. Acharya Abhaydev. He is in UP, just near Muzaffarnagar, means Charthaval is the name of the place.
That's Upper Pradesh, UP Upper Pradesh, is it?
Yes, he is in Uttar Pradesh. It is in Muzaffarnagar district, about 100 miles from Delhi, I think. East going west. That is one center. Another is Delhi proper, is Jawhar's place. It is on the way to Qutub Minar, on the 8th milestone, a big tract of about 25 acres or 20 acres, and a school building and a high school running. That is dedicated to Mother. Of course, there are no permanent disciples there, but Jawhar himself is a disciple, and some school teachers there are disciples, 4 or 5 out of 20. So that way it's a nucleus. Then in Haridwar there is a center.
Hardware.
Then our principal, professor, I think, what is his name? Indra Sen has his place in Ramgarh, up in the Himalayas. He had an orchard there, olives and these things growing there, you see. What is called grapes and all this is growing there on his land there. He had bought it when he was professor. Then he gave it over to Mother, passed it over to Mother, and now it has become Ashram branch there. And so they have a session there sometimes, you see. Two disciples, they are Ramgarh, near Nainital, you know.
Oh.
Almora, near Almora, about 60 miles east of Almora.
Yes.
Yes, it is near Almora, you see. Ramgarh. Ramgarh, Ramgadh. Ramgarh. There he has a center and a orchard, you see, a fruit garden. There 2 disciples are living. Away from it, another small center is there. Like that, there are small centers that are started recently and working.
That center where they've sent their relics, is that
That Delhi. One Delhi and one is Calcutta.
Well, there's one that's up, one that's on, I don't believe it's in a large city, but it's out in the country, and I think it's on the
Yes,
Ganges.
Yes, no, it is near
And the place that they sent the relics.
east of Calcutta. Yes, see, I went with the relics.
Yes. Where is that?
In Calcutta, near
Calcutta,
Calcutta.
near
Near
Calcutta.
Calcutta, yes.
But it's out in the country, isn't it?
Yes, it is in a place where Chaitanya was living.
Yes.
Chaitanya's place, native place of Chaitanya. And there is a women's college there.
Yes.
And it's this Bangabani institution, it is called, Bangabani, Women's College in Bengal, you see, and they have a big tract of land and they've installed the relics there. And all the organizers are devotees and disciples. There are institutions like that all over India, but strictly ashram are 5 or 6, not more.
Aren't there about 400 centers in India
Huh?
altogether? Aren't there about 400 centers?
No, about 150 or 160 centers.
Oh.
In Karnataka, one man has got about 500 acres now. And he has dedicated to Mother, written it in her name. A man has inherited that property, and now you know that sealing of land is already a law in India. So you can't have more than certain number of acres. The government has passed the law. So if he had not, unless you make it a non-profit making and hand it over to a trust, you can't own that much property. If you more than 100 acres, you can't own. In certain states, there are different, sealing is different, but there is a limit. So if you have a property, you have to find a relation who will say, all right, for the sake of name it, he will say 50 acres belong to him, 50 acres belong to him, and so on. You have to divide it up at least on paper, if not in fact. That's what mostly people do to avoid the law. Government knows that. But there are 5 or 6 centers actually with the disciples practicing the yoga and trying to lead a life under the new way of, attitude and new value. Such effort can't be big, you see. You cannot begin on a mass scale. It will be 5, 10 people, 20 people like that to begin. Church Hall, when it began, it was only 5 or 7. Now there are about 25.
At the ashram now, about 1,500.
About 12 to 1,500, yes, 13, 1,400.
That number
Including the school, I mean.
yeah, is that
School,
number
yes.
increasing all the time?
Well, it seems to be increasing. I don't wish it to increase, but it is increasing. Because when it increases, then you see the atmosphere, the change, and large number becomes difficult of management also. It is, yes, yes, it is. What is good is to have part like that somewhere and then take the part and put it out. Like the lake where you put 25 persons there, that is good. So at least 25 is a unit you can look after and do something with it. 1,500 out of that 10 or 15 doing nothing, you can't make out what is happening somewhere, is whether the ideals are maintained, whether regularity is maintained, organization is what, and so on. Of course, you leave it to them. Best part is there is no supervision in the ashram. But even for that outer efficiency, some sort of regularity has to be kept because food has to be brought at a certain time, milk must be milked at a certain time. There are things which have to happen in time. And that somebody voluntarily, willingly has to do. You can't compel also. It's a very complicated. It's the only mother who can do that, I tell you. That's why I told that day that if you want a standing miracle, it's the ashram in Pondicherry. There is no greater standing miracle than that.
Is there anyone that will fill mother's place?
Well, we never think along those lines. Something has to happen if the thing is to go on, isn't it?
Well, if she's such a leader with a group, there must be
Yes.
someone working with her that can fill in.
Well, there are departmental heads. Departments are working, and also there is technical coordination committee, so that each coordination, engineering part, or the workshop part, or the cottage industry part, or the provisional shop, and so on. They are all coordinated in a collect committee, and they meet once a week, Saturday 11 o'clock. Saturday 11 to 12, all of them meet and find out what one can do and where they have to coordinate. Technical Coordination Committee it is called. There are engineers and electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, accountants, people who run shops and produce goods and so on. They are all there. Agriculture, people who represent agriculture, all. If transport is required, then you say next week, so much transport I will require. And then the transportman says, motorman, that I have so much, so you better do like that, and so on. They have to coordinate. Otherwise, every time he requires, well, he says, motor car. He says, I have no motor car is yet. They're all gone. Trucks are not yet. So it is arranged in advance that what he requires next week. Then they say, no, put it off next week further. We can't give you, or we can give you, and so on. Cement has to be brought, and material has to be removed, and debris is to be taken away, and buildings are going on. It's a huge affair.
If the person isn't capable of fulfilling this mission,
Yes.
I imagine that there are others that can step in and just do it.
Well, there is a nucleus of people who are devoted to this work and know this work, have been doing 10, 15, 20 years, some of them. So naturally, they know how to go about it. Yes. There is no.
How do you manage the finance?
That is what I say, standing miracle. There is no permanent fund, one, and there is no profit coming, two, and no curtailment of expense, three. This is from absolute personal observation for 40 years, so not 1 or 2 days knowledge.
Well, you do get accessions of property from time to time. People come and join the ashram.
Yes, you get expense, increase of expense.
You also get accessions too, don't you? I mean, some of the people that have joined the ashram have brought some money with them.
You see, out of those people who join, about 10 to 15% only have brought.
Only about 10 to 15%. For instance, that
Rest of them, well, they come, and the Indian people who are the relations, they see to it that they don't carry property.
well, that family that runs the chicken ranch.
Yes.
They have a house there on the water. I think they did have a couple of years ago.
Ganguly.
Yeah.
Yes, they sold their property
Yeah, we did.
and they brought their money here.
Yeah.
Yes. But there are only 10 to 15%, maximum is 15. I would say 10 really speaking, but 15% is the maximum that gets some money there at all. And then you must count also that when he gives his property, mother takes the full burden of his maintenance.
Yes.
And one day I counted up, I'm a very bad accountant, I belong to Bombay side. So I sat down and said, so and such a man has given so much. He has 8 children living in the ashram. You see, a house is given, this is given, this is given. Then I counted up. Well, what he had given has already been consumed. 8 years of his stay has finished all that. Whatever he had given, and now the rest of the mother is pulling the weight.
They have something, don't they know, like the sugar mill and something?
Yeah, but sugar mill is proprietary and it cannot become ashram property, you see. It is personal property. He has given 5 lakhs of shares to the ashram so that whatever is the income, we will get something from that profit to the extent of 5 lakhs. Now the whole total is about 80 lakhs. So 80 lakhs of investment in which 5 lakhs are given to the ashram will bring some income.
A lot of his jobs are people in the ashram too, don't they? A lot of people that operate the factory are ashram money.
Yes, not his factory, no.
No?
No. In his factory, he has his own staff.
I see.
He made it clear from the beginning because he knows that mother would not compel. According to the rule that we have now read, she would not compel. And he says, I cannot run a factory without taking work. I can't pay a man for waiting to decide what he wants to do. He said, no, I have invested so much, I have to get work done, I have to sell the goods and I have to make some, if not money, at least interest of what I invested. And that is the man says, well, today I'm not in a mood to attend.
Well, of course, this to me is one of the problems that they have in their industries in the ashram. That these people work as they feel. Some of them probably do very well. I don't know.
Some do overwork. Yeah, there are people who overwork. I know. I myself did overwork for years. And I know young people who woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and worked till 11 o'clock. And then again from 3 o'clock again till 7 or 8 at night. And for years. So there are very hardworking people also, some of them very sincere. But there are others who say that, oh, today 2 hours work, all right. Go there for 2 hours and then take half an hour to go, half an hour to come. So it comes to 1.5 hours work. Now, in a factory or in a press, if you are running, you see continuous work of 4 hours you can put for something. But if a man works 2 hours, you see, before he settles it takes 20 minutes, before he closes it takes 15 minutes. Practical outcome is very little.
Well, I was going to say, there are some that are that.
And there is no compulsion. There is most, yes, but it's, yeah, that's it.
No compulsion when people aren't evolved to that point. Must be difficult too.
Yes, that's what she's waiting for, that if he comes to that point, he will do better. And that will be genuine. But what mother is wanting is genuine work. Genuine means spiritually genuine, means that which comes from like that, you see, because that would be true. And that would build up something real. This is success you can build up. She doesn't want to build up success. You understand the point? It's very real. So we know it. So we understand it. So we say, well, that's that. Either it is or it is not. It doesn't matter.
Of course, if some of the people there worked harder, they probably would make more income for the ashram.
Yeah, they do. They do.
But every individual has a limitation. Some people are leaders, others are followers.
But it's working on. Well, we have to leave it in the divine hands and wait. Well, that's like that.
Yeah,
The very thing that we could not imagine was that such a thing could happen.
At least,
I could never have dared to think that such a thing could happen in world if I did not participate and saw that yes, it could be done. And but for Sri Aurobindo and mother, I wouldn't have even dreamed that such a thing can happen. We can't imagine.
Mm.
I can feel an idea, but that it could happen actually, I would not have thought. Not possible.
Yeah, that's a living example.
That's why there is some justification, and when we say we stand on some ground, that gives us the conviction. So when we speak about this thing or carry about, we know that it is not simply in the air. It can happen.
Of course,
So
the
there is
possibility though that this frequency will change and that later on there will be some regimentation, whereas these people would have to step in line, do so much work every day. in order to
no. They
stay
do
with it.
step in line. You see, when they go to the playground, the boys go in absolute file and right, left, turn according to order because it's willing. They go there for that work. Nobody is compelled to go to the playground, but those who go to the playground have to go to discipline. You understand?
Yeah, but I
Ah,
mean,
so there is no lack of discipline that way. The students, when they take up a work, they do quite all right. This is ashram organization, the educational organization. You must divide the two. In the ashram, there is no compulsion. In the school, voluntary attendance is there, and when you attend, you have to be under discipline.
well, the other could work in the ashram as well.
And they
It
are,
may change.
some of them
It
are
may
working.
change.
Yeah, some of them are working very well. The motor department is working well, for instance. Hello, good night. He is already sleepy. Quite possible. He says individual can always do it. So, charity begins at home. A different form. It's
Yeah.
not necessary. Yes, it is always dependent on social, economic, and cultural conditions. It's not that it should be exact copy to copy.
Well,
Not at
yeah.
all. Not necessary.
Every individual should.
Yes, and every
So,
cultural group will have its own evolution of form. A new form will come into existence. Only the principle will be the same. That is the important thing, to maintain the true inner principle and follow it. That is what is required and intended. Outer organization is only a secondary result of the inner life. It is not that we want to bring an organization into being. We want to create an inner life. That's all. A possibility of inner life in which everyone will develop his immersed, spiritual capacities to the maximum and put it as the first thing. That's all. And he will not be idle. He will be doing work. We don't want that people should do nothing.
Can't believe that.
So, yeah. When they do, something will happen. Why not? Initially, there may be some obstacles, some difficulties, which in every work there are. That will be an occasion to practice the yoga better and take up the right attitude and you see, leave the inner spirit to work out and the higher consciousness to help and so on.
Are there creative people in the ashrams that can sell their paintings and sell their writing?
Well, there are paintings which have filled almost half this hall.
Yes, can.
They are all stacked up because mother doesn't sell. It's an offering to the mother, so it belongs to the mother. And she says, no, we don't want to sell. Now and then if somebody comes like him or somebody and says, I like a painting, then mother gives him a painting. And whatever he pays is all right, like that. She allows people to distribute like that. You see, there are Bombay friends of mine who took 3 or 4 paintings and paid 500 rupees or 1,000 or whatever they want to pay. She doesn't stipulate anything like that. The painter or somebody who is in charge will say generally that you can pay this much. So right. It is more or less regarded as something which they carry from the ashram with the goodwill like that.
Well, I'm thinking that you can find young people coming along, nurtured in that wonderful spirit there, that if they were clever, if they were endowed by nature with creative faculties, that they would have a wonderful opportunity to develop and then carry on their creative life there,
Yes, we can.
provided that they want family.
Yes.
And of course, I guess we'll go out and work, but
No, and those who go out in the world also will be affiliated. It could be. It is not that when they go out to the world they forget everything. No, they will carry the stamp and will carry the influence and most probably will bring back something to the ashram again. You never know. You see, once a seed is sown, you never know when it will sprout. So,
Well, it seems to me that there could be a way of financing the ashram, even outside of it, through creative work.
yes, there is a small group that is trying to start societies, Sri Society. They call it Sri Society. And they are increasing numbers in India. Yearly subscription 12 rupees or $2 or $3, and all the reports will be given to them, and they will yearly participate in the ashram's activity by being informed about it. When they go to the ashram, they will have some facilities which others haven't got, and so on. They are starting a society, Sri Society in India, in order to create an atmosphere helpful to the ashrams working out, you see.
Now, does the Indian government recognize some of the work that you're doing there?
Well, India government directly doesn't recognize anything. No, there are no direct connection with the government, and we don't.
Control. They're thoroughly aware of this kind.
Oh yes, they know. They know the institution, and they have some respect for it. I must say that India government has some respect.
But they don't ask for it or they receive it.
But we don't ask support, and we don't want any interference. Because if you receive support, immediately something will be there. We don't want. There are members there who are well inclined, parliament, elected members also. In ministry, there are good people who have come, good number. Even President Rajendra Prasad came, who retired now. He had come. Nehru has come twice. Like that, many of the ministers in the center and local governments have come there and have a respect for the institution and Sri Aurobindo's outlook, great respect. And also Nehru has won, though he doesn't know spirituality, still because it is international and well known, he is well inclined. Not that he does anything, goes out of his way to help, but he knows it's a good institution.